Somewhere along the rugged shores of ancient Greece, beneath skies that shimmered with the light of gods and storms alike, a name began to echo in fear: Medusa. The mortals whispered it in trembling tones, as though even speaking it might summon her dreadful gaze. To most, she was the monster of nightmares, the woman with serpents for hair, whose eyes could turn men into cold, lifeless stone. But they never knew her story. They never knew she wasn't born a monster. Before the curse, before her name became a warning, Medusa was a woman of astonishing beauty and uncheckable devotion, born to Phorcys and Ceto, ancient deities of the sea's hidden depths. Medusa was the youngest of three sisters, the Gorgons, but unlike her immortal siblings, Stheno and Euryale, Medusa was mortal. That fragile spark of mortality made her different, and it made her precious thought in her youth. Medusa would spend her days walking the sunlit shores, her laughter mingling with the sea breeze. Fishermen spoke of her golden hair that shimmered like sunlight on the water and eyes as green as the Aegean itself. She was not only beautiful, she was kind, curious, and full of life. And among her playmates, one stood closest to her heart, a boy named Iphicles, a childhood friend whose admiration grew into something deeper as the years passed. But Medusa had chosen another path. From an early age, she had been drawn to the goddess Athena, the gray-eyed deity of wisdom and war. When her sisters played make-believe as fearsome monsters or heroes, Medusa always chose to be Athena, noble, fearless, and pure. To her, the goddess wasn't just a divine figure. She was an ideal. So when Medusa came of age, she vowed to dedicate her life to Athena. She traveled to the city of Athens, where the Parthenon's great marble columns reached toward Olympus, and there she joined the sacred order of Athena's priestesses. Life as a priestess was one of purity and devotion. Those who served Athena were required to remain untouched by passion, their hearts devoted only to wisdom and the goddess herself. And Medusa, with her radiant grace, became a symbol of perfection within the temple walls. She led rituals with reverence, her voice rising like a hymn carried by the wind. Pilgrims came not only to offer sacrifices to Athena but to glimpse the young woman whose presence seemed to illuminate the temple itself. Her beauty became a blessing and a curse. Whispers spread across Athens. Men began to speak of her in taverns and markets, saying her hair gleamed brighter than Athena's golden helm, her eyes more captivating than the goddess's own. And though Medusa never sought attention, fame found her even among the gods, from his palace beneath the sea. Poseidon, the mighty god of oceans and storms, heard of the mortal priestess whose beauty rivaled Athena's. The thought intrigued him and angered him. You see, Poseidon and Athena were bitter rivals. They had once competed for the patronage of Athens itself. Athena had won by gifting the olive tree, symbol of peace and prosperity, while Poseidon had struck the earth with his trident, bringing forth a salty spring. The people chose Athena's gift, and Poseidon never forgot the humiliation. So when he heard of the mortal woman adored within Athena's temple, he saw an opportunity, a chance to wound his old enemy through her most devoted follower. Meanwhile, Medusa continued her service, unaware that the eyes of Olympus had turned upon her. Her days were spent tending to the goddess's shrine, lighting sacred lamps, and guiding those who came to seek wisdom or healing. But at night, she sometimes wandered beyond the temple walls, walking along the cliffs above the same sea that hid the god who watched her. One such night, as the moonlight painted the waters silver, she heard her name carried by the wind. Medusa. She turned, startled, to see the ocean itself stir. From the depths rose Poseidon, magnificent, terrible, radiant in his power. His trident gleamed like lightning, and his voice rolled like distant thunder. Child of the sea, he said, you are wasted in the shadows of another's temple. Come, and I shall make you queen of the oceans, adored by mortals and gods alike. Medusa trembled before his presence. Never had she seen such majesty, but her devotion to Athena burned brighter than fear or awe. Great lord of the deep, she said, I serve only my goddess. I have taken vows that cannot be broken. Poseidon's smile faded. What began as admiration turned to rage. The sea behind him darkened, churning with his anger. You would deny a god, he thundered. Medusa stepped back, but the waves surged forward, reaching for her like living things. She turned and ran, her heart pounding, her sandals striking the marble steps of the temple as lightning cracked above. Inside the sacred hall, she threw herself before Athena's statue. Goddess, protect me, she cried, but Poseidon followed, his fury unstoppable. He seized her there, before the cold stone eyes of Athena, and the temple filled with the roar of the sea and the screams of the mortal girl. When it was over, silence returned. Poseidon vanished into the waves, leaving ruin in his wake. Medusa lay at the feet of the goddess she had loved, trembling and broken. She was no longer pure, no longer the perfect priestess. And as dawn crept through the shattered temple, she wept, her tears falling on the marble floor like pearls lost to the tide. But the gods of Olympus are not merciful, not even the wise Athena. And what happened next would turn beauty into horror, and devotion into legend. When dawn broke over Athens, its light fell not on celebration or prayer, but on desecration. The sacred temple of Athena, once pure, once silent in reverence, now lay stained and broken. The marble floors were cracked, the air thick with the scent of salt and sorrow. At its center knelt Medusa, trembling, clutching her torn garments, her lips whispering a prayer to the goddess she had always loved. "Forgive me. I begged for your help," she whispered. "I did not want this." For a moment, only silence answered. Then the statue of Athena began to shimmer. The air around it warped, as though the stone itself were alive. A blinding light filled the temple, and from the figure of marble, the goddess Athena herself emerged, radiant and terrible. Her eyes burned with divine fury. "Medusa," the goddess spoke, her voice echoing through the hall like a storm. "You, who once bore my name with pride. You, who were chosen to keep my temple pure. How could you allow this defilement?" Medusa fell to her knees. "Goddess, I beg you, I was attacked. Poseidon, enough." Athena's voice cracked like a whip. "Do not speak his name here. You let him touch what was sacred to me. My temple has been shamed before the eyes of gods and mortals alike." Medusa's tears glistened in the dim light. "I did nothing. I resisted him. I cried out for you. I ran to your altar for safety." For a heartbeat, something flickered in Athena's gaze, a moment of hesitation, of painful understanding. But divine pride is a cruel master. Athena could not bear to be seen as weak, or her temple as violated. The laws of Olympus demanded punishment, not compassion. So the goddess hardened her heart. "If you could not guard your purity," Athena declared, "then let your beauty be your curse." She raised her hand, and the air erupted with divine energy. Medusa screamed as pain tore through her body, her golden hair, once her crown of light, twisted into writhing serpents. Her eyes, once full of warmth, blazed with accursed power, the gaze of death. Her skin paled, her veins darkened, and her voice fell into a hollow echo. Athena looked down at the trembling creature before her and spoke words that would echo for all time. "Let any who look upon you be turned to stone. Let men see not beauty, but terror. You sought protection from the gods, and now the gods will protect themselves from you." When the light faded, the temple stood empty except for a single sound, the hiss of serpents and the faint sobs of what was once Medusa. She fled into the night, covering her face, her tears falling unnoticed onto the ground. Each drop left tiny marks on the earth, cold, gray, and lifeless. Stone stopped by morning. Word spread through Athens. The temple had been defiled. The goddess was enraged, and the priestess, the beautiful Medusa, had vanished. The people whispered that Athena had cursed her. Others said Poseidon had transformed her in jealousy. But no one dared speak her name aloud. To them, she was already a monster. Medusa wandered far from the city, her heart shattered, her reflection too terrible to face. The forests and cliffs became her refuge, though the animals fled from her path. Even her own reflection turned her stomach, a cruel reminder of the goddess's wrath. Once, she had been surrounded by worshippers. Now, she was surrounded only by silence. Time passed. The world forgot the girl who had prayed for mercy. In her solitude, she began to change. Her tears turned to rage. Her sorrow hardened into survival. She wandered north, to the edges of the known world, to lands shrouded in mist and legend, where no mortal dared tread. There, among the desolate cliffs, she found an abandoned temple, ancient, broken, and overgrown. Once, it had been dedicated to Athena. The irony was cruel. Yet Medusa, even in her anguish, could not abandon what she had once loved. So she knelt among the ruins, lit candles from the sea breeze, and whispered prayers to the goddess who had forsaken her. Perhaps, she thought, even a monster can still pray. Years passed. Travelers spoke of a shadowed figure haunting the edges of the world, a creature with serpents for hair and eyes that turned men to stone. Warriors seeking glory ventured to hunt her, but none ever returned. She did not seek them out. They came to her, blades drawn, hearts full of arrogance, and she defended herself the only way she could. Each petrified face, frozen in terror, became another monument to misunderstanding. She had never wanted to kill. She only wanted peace. Yet with every death, her legend grew darker. The tales told by frightened survivors painted her as a demon, a temptress, a nightmare. Her name, Medusa, became a curse in itself. And yet, even in her solitude, the remnants of her old self remained. Some nights, she would sit beneath the moon, gazing at her reflection in a pool, but she could never look for long. The serpents hissed when she wept. Once, she had been called beautiful. Now, she was the face of fear. And far above her, on Mount Olympus, Athena watched. She saw the woman she had condemned, once her most devoted servant, now wandering in despair. The goddess felt something unfamiliar stir within her, regret. But the laws of Olympus were not easily undone. So Athena watched in silence, as her once faithful priestess disappeared into myth. But Medusa's story did not end in exile. Because the gods were not done with her yet. Fate, it seemed, still had one more cruel turn in store. Years turned into decades, and the world below Olympus forgot the woman who had once served Athena. But the gods did not forget her. To the mortals, she became only a story, a warning told to restless children. Beware the gorgon who lives beyond the edge of the world, they whispered. Her eyes can steal your soul. Her beauty was cursed by the gods themselves, yet few ever asked why. Few wondered what crime she had truly committed, or whether the monster they feared had once been a girl praying for mercy. Medusa's lair was deep in the lands of Hyperborea, far beyond where the sunlight lingered. There, ancient cliffs rose above storm-lashed seas, and wind howled through forgotten ruins. The air smelled of salt and stone. No birds sang, no footsteps echoed, except her own. She survived on the small creatures that dared enter her domain. Her days blurred into one another, the same silence, the same aching loneliness. And yet, within the crumbled stones of her refuge, she maintained something of her past. An altar. Simple, humble, a remnant of the goddess she had once served. Each morning, as the sun's first light brushed the cliffs, Medusa would kneel before it and whisper, "Forgive me, Athena, if you still hear me." But if Athena heard her, she never answered. Then one night, as the moon rose full and pale over the cliffs, the sound of footsteps echoed through the ruins, heavy, steady, confident. Medusa froze. She knew that sound, the sound of a hunter. For centuries, warriors had come for her, men seeking glory, fame, or the favor of kings. None had ever returned. Their stone faces lined the path to her temple like a warning carved by time itself. And yet, something about this one felt different. There was purpose in his stride. Not arrogance, not fear. Something deeper. The young man's name was Perseus, the son of Zeus himself. He had been sent by King Polydex, who desired to be rid of him. His quest, to bring back the head of the gorgon Medusa, proof of his courage. But Perseus did not come alone. The gods, ever eager to weave their games into mortal fate, watched closely. Hermes, god of travelers, lent him winged sandals to fly above the earth. Hades gave him a helmet that granted invisibility. And from Athena, yes, the very goddess who had cursed Medusa, he received the aegis, her gleaming shield polished to a perfect mirror. Was it divine irony? Or was it something else, perhaps Athena's unspoken wish to end the suffering she herself had caused? Perseus reached the edge of Medusa's realm and stepped cautiously into the ruins. He could feel the weight of silence, the tension in the air. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound echoed too long. And then he saw them. Statues, hundreds of them, scattered across the ground. Warriors frozen in terror, swords raised in vain. Their faces forever locked in the final moment of fear. Perseus gripped his sword tighter. His reflection glinted faintly in Athena's shield. Medusa, from within the darkness, felt his presence. She could hear the heartbeat of another living soul, the first in years. Turn back, she whispered into the shadows. Her voice was soft, broken, barely human anymore. You will find no glory here. But Perseus did not answer. He could not. He dared not meet her gaze, for one glance would mean his end. He moved by reflection, each step measured through the mirror of the shield. The silence between them stretched thin as a blade. Medusa watched his cautious movements, and something inside her stirred. Not anger, not hatred, but sorrow. Another one, she thought. Another soul sent to die because of me. She remembered Iphicles, the friend she had once loved, and how her curse had turned him to stone. How every attempt to reach out to the world had only brought more death. So she decided. She would not run. She would not curse another man by accident. She stood tall among the ruins, the serpents quiet now, as though they too understood the finality of what was coming. Perseus saw her reflection then, a flicker of motion, the faint outline of a woman's face, regal even in monstrosity. The snakes coiled like living crowns around her head. Her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, sorrowful and unblinking. For a heartbeat, Perseus hesitated. She looked nothing like the monster he had imagined. And then, in the silence, she whispered his name, though she could not have known it. Perseus! He froze. How could she know? Do it, she said quietly. If you must. End it. Before he could speak, before he could even breathe, the wind shifted. The serpents hissed. Her reflection flared in the shield, and with a single, perfect strike, Perseus swung his blade. There was no scream. Only the sound of steel through air. When he looked again, the reflection was still. Her body lay motionless upon the stone, the serpents curling gently as if in mourning. Perseus lowered his sword. For a long time, he did not move. He had been sent to slay a monster. Yet before him lay the body of a woman. From her blood, two forms began to emerge, one golden, one white as cloud. First came Chrysaor, the warrior with the golden blade, symbol of her unbroken spirit. Then came Pegasus, the winged horse, born pure and radiant, untouched by the curse that had bound his mother. Perseus stared in awe. The creatures rose to the heavens, vanishing into the light. It was as though the gods themselves were reclaiming what they had lost, Medusa's purity, her grace, her untainted soul. Gathering her head with trembling hands, Perseus placed it carefully within a sacred bag. He felt no triumph, only silence. Perhaps, he thought, some victories are not victories at all. He took flight, guided by Hermes' sandals, and returned to Athena's temple. When he presented the head, Athena's expression was unreadable. The goddess reached out, touched the serpent hair of the gorgon she had once loved, and for the first time, her divine mask faltered. In the depths of her heart, she felt regret. So she took the head of Medusa and placed it upon her shield, the aegis, not as a trophy, but as remembrance, a symbol of protection, of the wrong that could never be undone. And so Medusa lived on, not as a monster, but as a guardian. Her image, once feared, became a symbol of divine strength and wisdom. Athena carried her likeness into every battle, and mortals would forever look upon the gorgon's face not with fear, but with reverence, for Medusa was never a monster. She was a victim of gods, of pride, of misunderstanding. A woman who dared to be beautiful, devoted, and pure, and paid the price for the sins of others. Her story reminds us that legends often hide the truth, and sometimes, the monsters we fear the most were once the ones who needed saving. And so, the tale of Medusa comes to an end, not as a story of horror, but as a story of tragedy, resilience, and misunderstood devotion. She was never a monster. She was a woman caught between gods, between fate and injustice, who endured a punishment far greater than any mortal could bear. When you hear her name, remember her not only for the serpents and stone, but for her courage, her purity, and her unwavering heart. Legends are born from fear, yes, but truth lives in the quiet moments, in the prayers whispered in ruined temples, in the sacrifices made in silence, and in the lives remembered long after the world has forgotten. If you enjoyed this journey through the untold story of Medusa, you can explore more myths, legends, and forgotten tales right here. Each story is crafted to bring the ancient world to life, to remind us that even in darkness, there is a story worth hearing. Thank you for listening, for letting the myths breathe again, and for keeping the memory of Medusa alive, not as a monster, but as the remarkable woman she truly was.